They say it began in the east, not with fire, but with silence. The kind of silence that made your skin tighten. No birds, no wind, even your thoughts seemed to echo. Villages beneath the Calvaroon Range stopped sending letters. Hunters didn't return. Dogs whimpered without cause. Then the ash came. It didn't fall like snow. It bled from the sky, slow, heavy, clinging. The ground didn't frost. It suffocated. Old women whispered stories of an ancient breath returning. The gods exhaled, they said, and what remained was judgment. In the village of Venshir, they prayed to the mountain for answers. By morning, Venshir was gone. Not sacked, not razed, gone. In its place, a crater of black glass, heat still rising from it a week later. At the center, a spiral sigil etched into fused stone like a brand, not made by tool or man. The priest who touched it died screaming. He scratched one word into his chest before the fire took him. Returned. The High King of Dalmir summoned the lore circle. Scholars, monks, bone readers, all offered conflicting answers, until one of the bone singers, blind and ancient, simply said, "The ash god walks again." The room fell quiet. The ash god was not in the texts, not in the temples. He was in memory, scorched into minds like fire scars into bark. They said he had no name because names could be forgotten. But fire? Fire remembers. Kasari arrived 3 nights later, uninvited, unarmed, unafraid. She bore no sigil, no title, only smoke in her breath and a bag soaked in pitch. She dropped it on the king's map table, outspilled a skull, charred, inhuman, still warm. It had too many teeth, eye sockets too deep, and carved across the crown, a spiral of ash. Kasari said it was a remnant, a shard of the god's memory, not its body, its breath. And that more were coming. None believed her until the dreams began. The same battlefield, every night empty, burnt, endless. And in the middle, a figure, not walking, not floating, dragging, a blade longer than a tower beam, gouging trenches into memory itself. He had no eyes, only embers, no voice, only breath, and it whispered, not in sound, but in heat. Remember me. The ash came heavier after that. Crops stopped growing. Livestock refused to birth. Lakes dried without evaporation. People began burning without flames. It started with their breath, coming out in smoke. Then their eyes, drying. Their skin, tightening, until they cracked open like firewood. No screams, just stillness. As if they wanted to go. Kasari stood before the council. This god doesn't live, it persists. It doesn't want worship, it wants remembrance. The ash god burns itself into the world, into you. Every battle you fight, he gets stronger. Every war remembered, he wakes more. We gave him form, she said. Every time we chose to slaughter instead of speak, every torch, every sword, every throne won through blood. You don't defeat him, you starve him. But we're already too late. Outside the city, fires began to rise, not from invasion, from within. Ash was found in infants' cribs, spiral sigils on school walls, soot handprints that led into walls and vanished, whispers in chimneys, charred teeth in fountains, blood that steamed even in cold weather, and dreams, thousands, synchronized. Remember me. The ash god had not returned. He had never left. After the ash reached the capital, something shifted in the air. Not the weather, the memory. People began to forget what day it was. Maps no longer aligned. Names sounded unfamiliar in their own mouths. The ash god did not erase, he rewrote, and the first to be rewritten was the king. High King Vale Mournheart had ruled Dalmir for 22 winters, but now he no longer remembered his wife's name. He walked through halls he didn't recognize, sat on a throne that smelled of smoke. He wept ash. The court physicians said it was a curse. The bone singers said it was worse. He had been chosen. In his sleep, Vael spoke to someone no one could see, not in words, but in breath. He began speaking backwards, drawing spirals on his bed linens. He ordered all metal weapons removed from the palace. Then he asked that the walls be covered in soot. When his advisors resisted, they burned alive without flame. He stood barefoot in the ashes of their bones, smiling. "I remember him now," he said. "Don't you?" Kasari had vanished. Some said she walked east alone. Others claimed she burned herself as a ward. But the truth was worse. She was beneath the palace, In the Black Archive, guarded by a forgotten sect of eyeless monks, she opened the war journals of an empire erased from history. Inside were entries that could only be read when burned. Ash lifted the words like mist rising from a corpse, and they told of a crown, not made of gold, but smoke. A crown that chose its king by memory. The Ash god did not demand loyalty, he demanded recall. A king once crowned could never forget the wars of mankind. Every scream, every burning village, every dismembered body, nailed to trees for example's sake, lived again in his mind, and through him the god fed. Kasari burned the pages one by one, absorbing the memory of each war like blood through skin. By the time she emerged, her eyes had gone black, her voice cracked like charcoal. But she knew. Outside the city, villages began burning from the inside out. No armies approached, no arsonists, no rebellion, only whispers in dreams. And all said the same thing. The god does not punish, he remembers. In Dalmir, the king stood atop his palace roof. He gazed over his city, its towers veiled in ash, its people coughing memories. He raised his arms, not to surrender, to welcome. The god was coming, not from the east, from within. Kasari arrived too late. The king had carved the spiral into his chest. With his fingers, he burned without fire. And from his remains rose smoke that whispered in her voice, "Remember me." She didn't run. She knelt, because in that moment she understood. You don't kill the ash god, you become him, one memory at a time. The eastern kingdoms burned, not from war, from remembrance. Each city that remembered war began to vanish. Not all at once, piece by piece. Street names went first, then the churches, then the bones in their cemeteries. One day you had a neighbor, the next, only an empty chair. Memory was infection. In the city of Nalweir, a man named Bren kept a journal. He was a cartographer, but no map stayed the same. He watched buildings move, alleys close, doors open into nothing. One morning, he drew a spiral without meaning to. In the center, a house that hadn't existed yesterday. Inside, there was no furniture, only ash, and on the walls, handprints, hundreds. Too small to be adult, too warped to be children. He touched one, and forgot his mother's name. By dusk, he had forgotten language. By dawn, he could only hum a rhythm he didn't recognize. A battle hymn, ancient, not his. His final journal entry was only one sentence. I heard the blade dragging. Nalweir ceased to exist 2 days later. No flames, no wreckage, just absence. Birds flew where buildings used to stand. The only thing left was a spiral of soot, 20 meters wide, burned into the grass. Elsewhere, Kasari wandered, alone. She had begun to forget her own voice. But she remembered the god. That was enough. At night, she heard his footsteps in thunder, in rain, in breath. Not near her, not far. Inside, she came to the city of Krell, known for its libraries, for its historians, for its refusal to forget. Every war, every treaty, every massacre, it was all recorded there, and every single book was on fire. But the fire did not consume. It preserved. Kasari walked through flaming halls of knowledge and read without pain. The god's scripture had always been flame, and the librarians were his monks. Their faces were covered in soot. They sang in smoke. No words, just exhale and inhale in rhythm. They bowed as she passed, not out of reverence. Recognition. Kasari had been marked. In the center of Krell stood the flame hall. There, carved into black stone, was a throne, not for ruling, for remembering, each armrest scorched with wars long lost. The spiral of siege, the Ember Rebellion, the Salt Collapse. Wars that predated language itself. Kasari sat. The throne did not burn her. It welcomed, and in that moment she saw every war ever fought. Not as a scholar, not as a soldier, as fuel. Each battle a candle, each death a spark. And the ash god, eternal, patient, feeding, he never needed followers. Only history. When she stood again, the spiral was on her palms, burned in, not from punishment, from permission. The world would not be saved, only remembered. In ash, the Western nations held their final council in the sky citadel of Oren Hall above the ash line. It was the only place the god had not touched. They thought altitude could protect them, that wind would not carry memory. They were wrong. The summit was attended by kings, war masters, high mages, and the last peace weaver of the Southern Isles. Each came with terms, surrender, truce, firewalls of magic and blood. None came with silence. And so none survived. Before the talks began, a child entered. Alone. No one recognized him. No guards remembered letting him pass. His feet left no sound, his hands were covered in soot, his eyes were lit from within. He opened his mouth and said nothing. The silence did the work. Across the continent, fires began, not from bombs, not from siege, from memory. Forgotten betrayals reignited, old blood debts resurfaced. People turned on each other for reasons they didn't understand. And in every flame, his mark. Not a spiral now. A circle, complete. Kasari walked through the ruins of Dalmir. There were no bodies, only dust. Every memory had been claimed. She came to the throne room and found it empty, except for a blade, longer than she remembered, heavier and warm. The ash god did not stand before her, because he was behind her, because he was within her. He does not walk beside his prophets. He remembers through them. She took the blade. It did not burn her hands, because they were already ash. She knelt and began to write, not with ink, with flame, on stone, on skin, on sky, writing the history of what was lost, of what was owed. And as she carved the world's last words into the smoking walls of her dead kingdom, the sky split, not with thunder, but with silence. A final breath. The ash god had been remembered fully, and so he became real again, not to reign, not to command, only to be known. Every war, every burn, every scar, the scripture of his return. He does not speak, because fire does not explain, it simply consumes. And across what remained of the world, children are born with ash in their lungs, eyes glowing faintly. And in the silence between their cries, he waits, to be remembered again.